the football unites the world stuff. When Infantino says it, it's, bullshit, right? But it's also true. It is also true, right? To an extent, it is this unifying force, and it can be this transformative force. But that's not happening, right? What's happening is it's being used to buy power and buy support, and it's been used to fuel corruption. And that's a tragedy, for all the people it's not helping.
My guest is Nicholas McGeehan, director and co-founder of FairSquare, a non-profit organization that combines thorough, hard-hitting research with impactful advocacy to promote systemic change and stop human rights abuses. With over 20 years of experience in human rights research and advocacy, Nick increasingly works at the intersection of sport and human rights. He has conducted research and advocacy on a wide range of rights issues, including torture and enforced disappearances, abuses in agricultural supply chains, heat-related deaths in the construction sector, and the human rights impacts of misgovernance in sport.
You have an organization that disincentivizes ethical conduct. Right, that's what the structure does, and it propels people who are incredibly ambitious to the upper echelons of the organization. And people who are willing to keep the status quo going are the ones who succeed. And so these are essentially, they're power-hungry people, but it doesn't mean they're competent, and it doesn't mean that certainly doesn't mean that they've got the ability and the character to handle power. And I think what you see in Infantino, to me, he's like a morality tale sort of playing out in front of you, right? You're watching this fairly inconsequential, relatively intelligent, competent administrator, thrust into a job that gives him so much power and so much money, and he just can't handle it. He has, it's like he's lost his marbles in all of this. And he's surrounded by people telling him he's doing a good job, when he's clearly not, But imagine this 11 billion. Imagine you actually had a system where you said to member associations in the global south, okay, apply for this money. Tell us how you need this money, right? Tell us what projects you're going to do. Tell us what you're going to build. Tell us how you're going to provide football facilities for, women and girls in countries that need it, or how you're going to help lift people out of poverty through football, right? And we'll give you the money, and then we'll oversee how it's spent. We're not going to give any money to the English FA because they don't need it, or the Scottish FA because they don't need it. We'll give it to these other countries. And what you'd have is this vast redistribution of wealth from the global north to the global south, in ways that would genuinely benefit the game. The transformative potential is absolutely huge.
You are listening to CEO.
The UK Parliament is pushing legal measures that would literally and directly fight against the existence of independent journalists, independent media outlets like retortmedia.com, and indeed this podcast. I talked about the whole situation in this video in here. We urgently need your support. Your subscription on YouTube alone is not going to be enough, because if these measures do successfully go through Parliament, we are at a much higher risk than ever before to be shut down and even blocked from YouTube, TikTok, and all social media. That's why I need your support. Please make sure you subscribe on retortmedia.com/support. Provide us with whatever financial support you can. You can become a member, or you can donate anything from $1 to $10,000 if you want. It's entirely up to you. But this is the only way we can stay connected together, because Retort Media is not hosted in the UK or in the United States, but in Europe. So we are protected in there, and your support will ensure that we stay connected regardless of what this government decides to do. This is a very serious situation, and I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but this is happening in the United Kingdom. It's crazy. It's unacceptable. It's sad. As a British person, I am very heartbroken, but it is what it is. And the only way we can continue and for us to stay connected is for you to subscribe on retortmedia.com/support. Please do that as soon as you possibly can. And I appreciate your support. Now let's get back to the episode. Just for the listeners, we're recording this on the Thursday, so after the England v Argentina match. Nick and I just had a very brief discussion about who was happy for this of this result. To be honest with you, I'm not surprised. I was surprised the way it happened, to be honest with you. It's like I expected the match to probably go to extra time, and Argentina being Argentina, they would just clinch it towards the end. But the way England played was a bit, I was like, what the hell are you guys doing? They scored a goal and they just decide to cave in, and which was like a very strange strategy. But anyway, I'm a basketball player. I don't know much about football. I just enjoy watching it. I mean, how did you find the match?
Uh, yeah, I find it hard to watch England matches, which is unfortunately an affliction that my father passed on to me. Um, so I was just relieved. It's not. I don't necessarily get much joy out of England not winning, but I certainly find the prospect of English victories uncomfortable. Is how I put it, Tim. So I was, yeah, I felt it was a hard watch. It was an incredible game, very tense, and I was just a little bit, yeah, I was just relieved at the end. I'm like you, a little bit surprised that they didn't. I don't understand why they didn't just push on after they got the goal, but I guess I'm not. I mean, you at least were a professional athlete. My views on field matters aren't really worth much. But certainly very engaging.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think it's unfair that people targeting the coach seems. I mean, for me, the players are just as responsible. It's not just up to the coach to tell the players what to do. I mean, that's to some extent, that's kind of their job, but players have to make their own judgment as well, because when you're on the court, you can't really always predict what your opponents are going to do. And sometimes as a player, you just have to react to it. And like you use a little bit of intelligence. So to me, I mean, Kane is the captain. So why didn't he try and push the team? I mean, that's his job. He can tell the coach, "Hey, coach, we need to change and stuff." Like there's always that dialogue between the players and the coach. But yesterday, it just seemed that there's, for me, no leadership on the court or off the court. Very little communication. It was just kind of, they were kind of winging it, which is kind of weird. I don't understand why they played like that, but yeah. But I'm at least happy that Spain is playing because I'm a big Spain fan, and I hope. I mean, at the time when this episode comes out, ladies and gentlemen, like you will know who the champion is. We still don't know. I'm hoping it's Spain. I think Argentina. I mean, Argentina has Messi. That's the problem, isn't it? But Spain, I hope Spain wins it. To be honest, I want Spain to win.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I just like it to be a good game. At this point.
Yeah.
I'm sort of ambivalent on who wins it. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think Spain probably will win it, but who knows? Argentina seem blessed, don't they? In this tournament. So yeah, interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
No, me too. Absolutely. I can't wait. But of course, this is somewhat relevant because obviously some of the things I see on social media that, of course, Argentina are going to win because FIFA are, sort of in favors with Argentinian president in the same way with Trump and stuff, which is, I think, is a very nice segue to the work that you do at FairSquare. So as a warm up, can we start there? How did you start FairSquare, and who is FairSquare, and what was the trigger point for you to go after FIFA?
Yeah. So we set up FairSquare, me and a former counterpart at Amnesty International, set up in 2018. I was a Human Rights Watch researcher until between 2012 and 2017. And one of the issues, I worked on the Gulf states, so one of the issues I worked on was the Qatar World Cup, doing a lot of the research into the abuses that were linked to that tournament. My counterpart at Amnesty International obviously did the same sort of job. And we set FairSquare up in 2018 because we wanted to continue the type of work that we were doing, but we wanted to move outside of these big NGOs and do work that was just a little bit more flexible and nimble, and to take slightly different approaches, which you can't really, often you can't do in these big organizations. They're great, they're incredibly impactful and powerful, and you've got this big machinery behind you, but there are restrictions to the types of approach you can take. And so we wanted to try new things, and we set it up in 2018 partly to do that. And it was actually, football was one of the issues that I felt we weren't able to effectively tackle, right? This sort of term, sportswashing, has sort of come into play and is quite prominent these days. But back in 2012, 2013, wasn't a term, but we were at the time seeing the Gulf states take a really keen interest in football and soccer. buying up European clubs, for example. So the UAE's purchase of Manchester City being a prime example, and then latterly you had the Saudi Arabian takeover of Newcastle, and of course you had the Qataris' interest in Paris Saint-Germain. So this was all happening at the time I was at Human Rights Watch, and I was very concerned about it. So I'm a football fan, and I sort of understand how powerful these clubs can be. I understood the sort of political or the sort of public relations benefit, the communications benefit, the political benefit that would flow from owning a club like that. So this was happening in parallel to the Qatar World Cup, and I didn't feel that we as an NGO really had the tools required or really understood the threat that this posed. Not on the field, where the threat I think is obvious and people have begun to understand it, but off the field in relation to the power that control of football or the ability to use football for political reasons that would give to the Gulf states. So that was going on, and then the other thing that sort of inspired us to do more work on it was really FIFA's response to the Qatar 2022 issue. Like for a period of, I think the first meeting I ever had with FIFA would have been in 2013 in Zurich. And from that moment right up until the tournament ended and beyond, in fact, their response was just one of, initially it was dismissal and this isn't our problem. It moved into, okay, we're going to engage on these issues and we're going to have a human rights policy, etc., etc. But when you look beyond the mechanisms and you look beyond all the sort of the things they put in place to give the impression that they took this stuff seriously, I don't think their attitude ever changed. It was really just one of not our problem. And that was deeply frustrating because we were dealing with, in the case of Qatar 2022, we were dealing with cases of like young men whose lives were being destroyed because they were trying to build this tournament. And many of them were dying, and being, the families were just getting a body back in a coffin marked death from natural causes and nothing else done about it. And there were very clear things that FIFA could have done to prevent that, to stop that from happening. They had a lot of power, a lot of leverage, and they just did nothing. And so I think coming out of that experience, we were so angered and so frustrated. And also we didn't want to sort of repeat this sort of same campaigning that we'd repeated, because now we're going to have a Saudi Arabia World Cup, right?
Yes.
And we didn't just want to be the same part of the machinery doing the same things, just a cog in the machinery, if you will. And so we decided that it would make sense to actually take the methodology that we have as sort of human rights researchers, but direct it at FIFA. Instead of going to them and asking them to be a partner and helping us achieve X or Y, well, let's appreciate let's recognize the reality that this organization is dysfunctional and is part of the problem. And unless we actually fix this organization, we're just going to get the same thing happening over and over again. So we basically started building a body of work on FIFA, and we've been doing that since 2022. And that's sort of taken us to where we are today, where I feel that we've sort of, I guess, carved out a little space for ourselves, where we're basically the only NGO that directly focuses our attention on FIFA in a way that isn't trying to get in the room with FIFA. People always say, have you met with FIFA? Are you chatting to them? To which my response is, I'll be quite happily chat to FIFA, but I'm not necessarily that interested in getting into the room with them, because I think it's not a personal thing. It's the structure itself is rotten. It's rotten to the core. And so having a conversation with anyone who works within that structure could be interesting and illuminating on one level, but it doesn't change the sort of the structural problems that we are seeking to address and seeking to reform. And so that's where we are now as an organisation. And I'm quite, I think the 2026 World Cup has sort of illuminated a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, and a lot of the arguments that we've been proposing. None of this has been a surprise to us. Maybe the way it's played out from time to time. That's a little, shocking, remarkable, but it all flows from this governance structure that is, as I say, that is utterly rotten and dysfunctional.
the thing that I find interesting, because obviously I don't follow football as much, but I'm definitely familiar with the whole idea of sports washing, because it's even, I think it's before the Saudis and the Qataris started to invest, or well, they call it invest, basically buy out Premier League clubs in the UK and of course European clubs, etc. But even I remember a very good friend of mine, actually, he's a negotiator, professional negotiator. In fact, he was part of the negotiating team, the European negotiating team versus the British government during Brexit. And I used to tell him, because we love, he obviously is a huge basketball fan, and we always chat about basketball and stuff. And a while back, I told him that, what I love about sports, obviously as an ex-athlete myself, but that was in the 90s for me, is that it doesn't really care about politics. Certainly we players never cared about politics. For us, or certainly I speak for myself, I always found it exciting to meet players from different countries, understand their culture. That in fact, as an athlete, this is how you actually build your intelligence as a player. You have the ability to understand people, understand the psychology. There's a lot of really cool stuff about it. And the thing that he told me that was quite funny, that, he said, Tim, mate, sports washing it's always been a thing. Because as a negotiator, for example, he would do research about whoever that he's targeting, for whatever reason. It's like, what is that person's favorite sport? And they would try basically take him to a match, right? Whether it's football or baseball or NFL or whatever, right? VIP seats and stuff like that. And he said to me, like, he kind of made the point that the environment for sports, perhaps players are somewhat isolated from it. Maybe not anymore from what we've seen yesterday. We'll come back to that in terms of what Argentina did after they won the match with England. But he said that the environment around sport is designed where you use it as a tool to facilitate decision making, be it in government, corporations. You facilitate, good as well as dodgy relationships, basically behind the scenes. So, but I think, you mentioned Qatar World Cup. FIFA was already corrupt well before that, wasn't it? But it kind of, I think because of the Qatar World Cup, I think the general public started to pay more attention towards that problem within FIFA. So my question is, do you know when did this actually start? Because of course, I assume that FIFA started genuinely as an organization that wants to promote football for the love of football, try to use football as an opportunity for social good, get kids off the streets, etc. I mean, even for a very brief period when I trained with the Leicester Riders here in the UK for basketball, I mean, we had days where we would open up our doors, local communities in Leicester for kids to come and train with us. We showed them a few tricks and stuff like that for free. And I actually saw the impact. Some of these kids had really negative backgrounds, dysfunctional families, whatever. And I could see that them being in the basketball court with us, it was like a different world to them, and they loved it. So there's that. For me, I'm a huge believer in the positive outcomes of sport. And I think, maybe I'm naive. I believe when FIFA started out, in how many years ago that was a genuine plan. When did it flip? Yeah. When did it become the organization that we see today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll try and give you the potted history of it as quickly as I can, I guess. So sure. FIFA began in 1902 or 1904. I never forget it. I forget the precise date. And basically,
a very long time.
Well, it's been around for a long time, right? And it's set up to run football matches. That's it. Set up to organise international games between nations. That's what it was really about, and to promote the laws of the game, and so on and so forth. The European Federation set it up. Now you fast forward to the 1970s, and it's based in Switzerland, and it's an association under the Swiss Civil Code. It's run like a badminton club or a ping pong club, right? That's the governance structure that manages it, and this is all fine, right? It's not a big problem because it's still doing what it always did. It's organising games, it's organising World Cups. It's a sort of stuffy little organisation, but.
Was it run by ex players as well? Wasn't it?
No, it's always
footballers would run.
always run by member associations, and it was the English who typically controlled it. So in the 70s and 60s and 70s, it was run by an Englishman called Stanley Rouse, you know. And Rouse he was a bit of a colonialist, frankly. He liked having European control of it, and he didn't really see or want to necessarily fully exploit the commercial aspects of the game. Along comes this Brazilian guy by the name of João Havelange, who was a former Olympic athlete. I think he was a rower. And Havelange does see the commercial benefits of the game. And so he starts competing for the presidency with Rouse, and he defeats Rouse. And his key ally in this was one of the Dassler brothers, Horst Dassler, I think, who is running Adidas at the time. I forget which Dassler brother it is. I think it was Horst. So Dassler's running Adidas, and he definitely sees the commercial opportunities, and he wants to use FIFA and the World Cup to sell Adidas gear. So Havelange and Dassler basically turn it into this commercial giant, and they bring on people like Sepp Blatter, the former president, and all sorts of other commercial guys. They get Coca-Cola involved, and suddenly the World Cup goes from being a fairly well-run but small tournament, not with any sort of great commercial aspect to it, becomes something completely different. And they start using football and using FIFA to sell and to generate vast amounts of revenue. So that's when the organization sort of really began to flip. That's the moment where you could say that's where the problems began. Because suddenly it's not just running football tournaments, it's generating revenue, right? And these two things start to come into conflict with one another. It goes on and on and on to develop more and more revenue. And then in the 1998, the next president, Sepp Blatter, realizes that development money and development funds is a really good way to control the organization and to guarantee power. And this speaks to your point about the transformative power of sport, right? I agree with that. But that's the rhetoric that FIFA uses. So what FIFA does is all this money that it's generating from sponsorship money and from broadcasting money, we're talking billions and billions of dollars, right? It distributes that money to its 211 member associations. Yeah. Each one of those 211 member associations has got one vote at the FIFA Congress, and they vote for the FIFA president. Each one of them gets the same amount of money every year, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a really rich federation, let's say the United States Football Federation, the English FA, they will get the same amount of money as very poor associations, right? Associations in Africa, associations in Asia, ones who completely depend on FIFA money, right? So what this has created is a system whereby the money that is generated by FIFA is redistributed to member associations, about 70% of whom are entirely financially dependent on that money and who vote for the FIFA president. Yeah. And the quid pro quo in all of this is you spend that money how you like it, and we'll run FIFA how we like it. I.e., you don't hold us accountable, and we're not going to hold you accountable. And that is the system of patronage on which FIFA turns. It is quite a remarkable situation. I'm trying, and I do actually talk to people who work in development, right? Now, you take any development organization worth its salt, right? Like take Save the Children, right? For example. Yeah. Now, FIFA redistributes almost, we're talking of levels of money are redistributed in what they call development funds, similar to the money that is redistributed by a giant like Save the Children, right? Now, every single dollar of Save the Children's money that's going out to the Global South will be accounted for. It'll be audited, it'll be checked, there'll be a needs analysis to ensure that it was given to the right person and it was spent in the right way, okay? FIFA has literally none of that. So it doesn't matter how much money you need. It doesn't matter what your football development needs are. You're all going to get the same amount of money, and there is literally no oversight over how it's spent. Now, I don't know about you, but I always say this to people, like I run a sort of pretty small NGO. If someone gave us $10 million every 2 years, okay, it'd be nice, but it would be a bit of a problem, right? Because we wouldn't know what to spend on. We don't need $10 million. But if someone gives it to you, what's going to happen to that? And what if they're going to promise you that in another 2 years, you're going to get another 10 million, but you might get 15 million in 2 years. So what happens is you get these fat member associations in countries where there's, poor records on corruption, poor records on the rule of law, where graft is quite commonplace, where the relationship between the government and the federation might be, close and problematic. And FIFA is basically pumping money into these associations. And the rhetoric is, it's that thing that you talked about. This is all about the transformative power of football. We're building pitches. We're making it possible for boys and girls to play the game. That's exactly what they're not doing, because they're not overseeing how the money is spent. So yes, there will be some pitches built along the way, and yes, some kids will get to play. But instead of taking all this money and saying, okay, who needs it? Like, who needs it the most? Okay, and making sure that the organization or the part of the organization that distributes that money is firewalled off from other parts of the organization that are responsible for regulation and governance. That's not happening. It's all it's a big sort of pot of money coming in and going out, and power being accumulated, and favors being given, and favors being asked. And that's how the system is running. But it all goes back to the fact that the governance structure that was set up was fine at the time when it was set up, because it was literally like a ping pong club. It was just a football club. But now it's something else. And they never caught pace with it. And a lot of people are lining their pockets, unfortunately.
I mean, it's fascinating to me. I'm a bit speechless, to be honest. But of course, Sepp Blatter is the one that seemed to be getting most of the flack about that. I guess he ran the organization for a very long time. He's kind of become the epitome of FIFA's corruption, etc. And of course, he was removed, and now we've got the new guy, right? I mean, for those who might not be aware, why did FIFA remove Sepp Blatter? What happened? Just as a reminder for those who are probably not familiar with the story.
Sure. So there were a ton of corruption scandals in Blatter's tenure, and most of them related to sort of corruption in the broadcasting deals. Yeah. So basically, FIFA officials were going out, and selling broadcasting rights below market value in return for big brown packets full of cash. And that was quite endemic. And it was a sports marketing company in Switzerland that was actually set up by Horst Dassler. As I'm saying this, I'm really bothered if I've got the wrong Dassler brother. But anyway, we can put this in the notes if it's the other one.
Well, we'll correct it just in case.
Yeah, it's this blank spot in my mind just now. So that process was ongoing, and there were lots of rumblings about investigations and so on and so forth. It all came to a head in 2011 when FIFA ran a sort of bidding process for the 2018 World Cup and the 2022 World Cup. And to everybody's surprise, the 2018 World Cup went to Russia, and the 2022 World Cup went to Qatar. Yeah. Now, this caused huge consternation because among the other bidding countries included places like England, the United States, Australia, big global north powerhouses, and yet FIFA gave the tournaments to these, let's say, countries that were not expected to win the bidding processes for either of them. It ultimately led to the United States government, the Department of Justice, launching an investigation into corruption. And that is ultimately what brought Blatter down, because in 2015, there was an arrest of senior officials in a hotel in Switzerland called the Bonnelat.
Yeah.
I think there were nine FIFA officials who were dragged out and were essentially implicated in bribery and racketeering by the US Department of Justice, and who were charged and who were prosecuted for that. And the fallout from that, Blatter eventually had to go. The sponsors were among those who said, we cannot have these allegations of corruption linked to this organization that we're sponsoring. And the fallout and the controversy became such that he had to go, and FIFA had to implement a reform process. So in order to ward off sort of further regulatory intervention, which is the thing that they're terrified of. So sports governing bodies, the thing they all talk about is autonomy, right? They want politics out of sport, not because they're concerned about necessarily politics, were they concerned about the effect of politics on them, i.e., regulation? That's what they don't want. So they have written into their statutes, non-interference, because that's what they want to guard against. So they set up a reform process in order to sort of provide the reassurance to the sponsors and to possible regulators that everything was going to be okay. And they passed a big series of reforms in 2016. And a new man was elected in 2016. And he was part of the reform process. In fact, he helped craft the document that was supposed to be the basis for FIFA's reform process. And his name was Gianni Infantino. Yeah. So Gianni Infantino gets elected in 2016, and he comes to power promising a few things. Talked a lot about reform on the one hand, and he said that there was going to be a new dawn, clean slate. Under his leadership, things are going to be difficult. But he also said, at the same time, he said there's going to be more money. Yeah, I'm going to provide you with more money to the member associations. So if you're watching closely at the same time, you'd be saying, hold on a minute. There is the central contradiction between these two positions. You are saying you're going to reform the system. You're also saying you're going to turbocharge the patronage system with more money. And unfortunately, what the US Department of Justice didn't do, because they're a lawmaking institution and they're, a law enforcement institution rather, they're not in the process of governance and intervening in the affairs of Swiss associations. They didn't do anything, and nobody did anything to break up the central problem at the heart of FIFA, which is the relationship between the senior leadership and the member associations, and this development money, the thing that I explained. So that never changed. So what you got is a lot of committees, you got a human rights policy, you got some serious people brought on board, who I think provided initially quite a lot of reassurance that maybe it was a new dawn. But nothing actually changed. And in the 10 years since, what's been happening really has really been the sort of unwinding of that reform process. Infantino has accumulated more power than Blatter ever had. The organization has more money than FIFA under Blatter ever had. They're redistributing more money than they ever had. And the consequences, I think, are what we're seeing right now. The sort of cozying up to authoritarians and dictators, because those are the guys that will give you the money, no questions asked.
Yeah,
and guarantee the money will get, no questions asked. So it's really quite interesting. It's sort of transformed from Blatter, from a sort of dysfunctional organization under Blatter, into one that has the appearance of functionality under Infantino, but is actually as dysfunctional, I would say, but it's actually become quite dangerous because it's become this sort of handmaiden to authoritarians, and they're sort of assisting in the political projects of some deeply problematic people. Donald Trump being one, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia being another. But yeah, that's again, it all comes back to structure and governance and the fact that it was never fixed.
I mean, it's interesting about Infantino as well, because I can't remember who said this. Well, one of the football commentators made a point that he is the most political leader FIFA has ever had. That even Sepp Blatter was not that bad. And funnily enough, speaking of which, when this whole debacle of I forgot the American player's name, that red card, disqualification. Sepp Blatter went on Twitter or X and called out Infantino, saying, "Oh, this is way too corrupt," and everybody was laughing. It's like, what? Sepp Blatter called out Infantino, so that kind of highlights this is like the craziness of the situation.
Yeah, totally. And I've spoken to a lot of people who would say that what Blatter did was Blatter facilitated the corruption of others and tolerated the corruption of others, but had a sort of keen eye on the reputation of, or a keener eye on how FIFA was run. He was a scoundrel. He's a rogue. But there was I think he probably had red lines, and I think for him, Infantino was crossing those red lines quite clearly. So yeah, when you're being called to account by the man who is synonymous or had been synonymous with FIFA corruption, then yeah, you're clearly in a bad place, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you think I know it's a bit of a hypothetical, but let's just have a little bit of fun. Do you think if Sepp Blatter was still the leader today, would you have given Trump the Peace Prize, the FIFA Peace Prize? So cold.
No, I don't think he would have. I think it's obvious he would.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so. Yeah. That's what I thought.
It's fascinating though, right? Because what you get is you have an organization that disincentivizes ethical conduct, right? That's what the structure does. And it propels people who are incredibly ambitious to the upper echelons of the organization. And people who are willing to keep the status quo going are the ones who succeed. And so these are essentially, they're power hungry people, but it doesn't mean they're competent. And it doesn't mean that, certainly doesn't mean that they've got the ability and the character to handle power. And I think what you see in Infantino, to me, he's like a morality tale sort of playing out in front of you, right? You're watching this fairly inconsequential, relatively intelligent, competent administrator, thrust into a job that gives him so much power and so much money, and he just can't handle it. He has, it's like he's lost his marbles in all of this. And he's surrounded by people telling him he's doing a good job, when he's clearly not,
And for those who probably don't know, because I'm sure there's a lot of information about his background. I mean, what is his background? I mean, how did he become the elected leader of FIFA?
Yeah, so he was a sort of just a football administrator within UEFA. So UEFA would be the European Confederation. So you've got FIFA at the top of the pyramid, and you've got 6 regional confederations: UEFA, CONMEBOL, CONCACAF, OFC, AFC. I'm going to forget one, but they basically each cover the different regions of the world. And UEFA is the richest, the most powerful of them all, because it basically controls European football and European club football, of course, which is hugely successful. So Infantino was the sort of assistant to a guy called Michel Platini, who's a former French international player. For anyone who's unfamiliar, great player, an outstanding player in the 1980s. And Infantino was the guy. He was the guy who used to pull out the balls at the World Cup draws, at the UEFA draws. That's how he was known. Yeah, so he wasn't seen as somebody who was particularly remarkable. Platini was the guy who was very close to Blatter and who everybody assumed was going to get the top job after Blatter left. But when Blatter fell, Platini also fell. He was implicated in the same sort of corruption scandal that brought Blatter down. And the guy who emerged from this as the sort of top guy from UEFA was Infantino. So he had been that sort of behind the scenes guy who was known for being smart. He's a lawyer, I believe. Smart, intelligent, good networker, good communicator, but not someone who was ever vetted or ever envisaged for the top job. And then, because of the way this corruption scandal played out, and because of who fell, he was left standing at the end. So yeah, it's an interesting story he has. But he was never. I mean, you can see when he talks, right? He's not a great speaker. He might be a great internal communicator to the outside world. I think he's a dreadful communicator. But I think that probably speaks to the fact that was never where he came from. He was a sort of surprise candidate who sort of won the race.
Well, I'm not surprised that he's a lawyer. I mean, he reminds me of Keir Starmer, right? Like, probably very good at the administrative stuff behind the scenes, but when it comes to public communication and charisma, it's just not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never actually thought of the Starmer comparison, but he is similar, right? Starmer has this sort of look that he's like a rabbit in the headlights whenever he's asked anything, and it doesn't come across as authentic. And I think Blatter's the same. Infantino's the same, except he of course doesn't put himself forward for any interviews. He's never interviewed. He's never before the press. I mean, that he gave a press conference before the World Cup there, but that's the first one he'd given in 3 years. They don't do press conferences, so he completely curates his output. It's all on Instagram, or he'll do sort of puff piece interviews with influencers who are not going to ask him any sort of serious questions. He completely shies away from the media.
And well, speaking about that, I mean, you hit the media. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday? Yesterday made the news, which is the reason why actually I reached out. That you successfully now launching a direct investigation into Infantino with the International Olympic Committee. So, how did that come about, and what do you think the outcome could potentially be, or what is the aim of this investigation?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go back a little bit to December last year, and the sort of peace prize that was given to Donald Trump by Infantino. So after they gave him that prize, we filed a complaint with FIFA's ethics committee. We'd been collecting information throughout the year in relation to expressions of political support that Infantino had given to President Trump. And we collected all this in a dossier, and we submitted that to FIFA's ethics committee. You're supposed to be politically neutral as a football administrator, and if you're not, you can be barred from football activity for 2 years. So I don't think there's any doubt that Infantino is guilty of that. So we filed a complaint with FIFA, called on him to be suspended, and that got quite a lot of attention at the time. You know, that's since been, we've had sort of high-level support for that complaint from the Norwegian Football Federation. And we also had 50 members of the European Parliament who wrote to FIFA last month saying they supported our complaint. FIFA has acknowledged the complaint, but they've never given us any information on whether an investigation's been initiated. I highly doubt one has, you know. I think it was last week. And now we'd always intended to file something with the International Olympic Committee. Infantino is a member of the IOC, and he has been since 2020. And the IOC, like FIFA, has pretty strict rules on political neutrality. You have to swear an oath, in fact, when you join, saying that you respect the Olympic Charter, you respect its code of ethics, and political neutrality is at the heart of these charters, of these rules. So there was some talk actually about the possibility of an IOC complaint, which we spotted on social media. And we thought, well, since this is now out in the open and people are talking about it, we had better move ahead and file this complaint. So we announced our intention to file last week, and we filed it on Monday with the IOC. Again, pretty similar argument to the one that we made to FIFA's ethics committee. We added in some new details, so we added reference to the Balogun affair that you referenced earlier, and the allegations that Infantino acquiesced to political pressure from President Trump to overturn the ban on a US national player. We also added some details about FIFA fan sites being used for data harvesting purposes for the Trump administration, and a senior political digital campaigns advisor. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. The US Democrats have been talking about it. You have to enter this fan site in Washington, D.C., you have to give your name, your email, and your phone number. That information is being given direct to an organization called Campaign Nucleus, which is run by Donald Trump's former digital media advisor. And the Democrats believe that it's being used for, essentially partisan marketing purposes by the Republican Party and by Trump. So, and Infantino publicly promoted this fan site on his Instagram account in May.
Wow.
Yeah, it's. It just adds to the list of instances where we believe it is pretty obvious that Infantino has breached the rules on political neutrality. So yeah, we filed that on Monday. In terms of the chances of success, I don't hold out great hope either for FIFA or for the IOC. In relation to FIFA, we did it because we wanted to collect the information in one place. But we also wanted to demonstrate that these accountability mechanisms don't function. That was part of it. We wanted to test whether or not the complaint would be taken seriously. We were pretty confident that it wouldn't be. And so far that's been borne out. Will the IOC, do something different? I think it's doubtful to some extent, because the US has the Olympics in 2028. Are they really want to go and upset President Trump in advance of that? Maybe not. I'm hopeful. There's been a lot of talk in the IOC about their commitment to autonomy and political neutrality. So this is a good test for them, because the evidence is damning and I think overwhelming. This guy has broken the rules, but will anyone pick him out? probably unlikely.
Well, yeah. Well, unfortunately, the IOC themselves aren't any angels themselves, are they? I mean, I have major issues with the IOC with the fact that they're also kind of like FIFA. They make ridiculous amount of money from sponsorships, etc. Yet none of that cash goes to the athletes. Not a penny. I mean, this is something a lot of people don't realize. I mean, I told a friend of mine recently, actually, she's not really into sports. Because I told her that like there was a period where I was trying to figure out, can I get into the Olympic team, whatever. I mean, basketball wasn't big in the UK in the 90s, that big for it to be in the Olympics. But I was looking into it. And that's when I found, I didn't even know that, but I found out then that as an Olympian, you get nothing, not a penny. Like basically it's up to you to figure out basically where do you get sponsorships from, etc. Now, for me, that wasn't a problem because I was already kind of working on that, before, because basketball, again, there's not much money in basketball in the UK. It's not like the NBA. Hence, that was my dream, which didn't happen as always. But anyway, but the fact that as an Olympian, I mean, to me, if you're an Olympian, you're literally at the top of the top. You're literally Premier League level. Say if it's football, you're Premier League level footballer to be an Olympian footballer, but you don't get anything. But they're making shitloads of money, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a disgrace. This is ridiculous. And it seems like FIFA has an influence on that as well. It's like it's a FIFA modus operandi, isn't it?
Yeah, it was interesting when we started the campaign on FIFA, right? Because the big question people asked us and sort of question what we're doing, they're like, is it just FIFA or are you going to do the whole thing, right? And a lot of people said, if you're going to do FIFA, you have to do UEFA and you have to do the IOC. And you have to do more than that, because I think a lot of these problems that we're identifying in FIFA aren't unique to football. Absolutely not unique to football. It's just that football is the world's most popular sport. It's the one the one that people see, and the one that more people care about than any other. So in a sense, the decision to really focus on FIFA was partly coming out of the fact we'd done a lot of work with them on Qatar, and partly to do with the fact that we like football and we understood football better than we would understand basketball, for example, right? But it was also the fact that it's the biggest sport, right? And it's the one where it's most obvious, but it's not. It's absolutely not a problem that is just confined to football. It's everywhere, and it's in lots of sports. It's just this is the one that people engage on, and this is the one where I think we can get the political pressure that might lead to the type of regulation that would help all sports, right? Because if someone's going to regulate FIFA, it's not going to be football-specific regulation. It will be sport-specific regulation. Sport-specific regulation on governance affects everyone. Affects basketball, affects tennis, affects athletics, everyone. So I think it's it's the point of the spear that gets us to where we need to get to. But my understanding of the IOC is nowhere near as extensive as some people's, and I understand FIFA a lot better. But to go back to how you started this point, no, there are no angels, right? And there is dysfunctionality there that leads to all sorts of problems. Not least the fact that the guys who are creating the content and the guys who everyone tunes in to see, athletes, you guys, aren't rewarded. And it's all these other sort of elites sort of flying around and staying in 5-star hotels and getting nice fancy, places on committees and such.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, I mentioned the NBA. There's a scandal that is brewing or has been brewing in the NBA where they started to, they like, I'm not following it too much in that regard, but there's basically legal issues. Like they used to have very strict legal, or rather regulation against gambling. So it's sort of internal gambling, I think between players or whatever. But apparently they relaxed the regulation, and now it's rife, of course, with the rise of things like Polymarket, these betting apps and so forth. Now it's basically, in fact, they've legalized gambling in the NBA. It's sort of through the back door, and it's pretty catastrophic. I mean, it's again, people are absolutely livid because again, the NBA always promoted itself kind of like FIFA, right? It's about bringing communities together and building courts and opening opportunities for players all over the world. I mean, before it was just America, but now it's all over the world and so forth. And it's like, but it's the same problem, isn't it? Money. Yeah. It's like that's corrupt money.
Yeah,
again,
yeah, totally. And they use this argument about we need to be autonomous, right? Like don't get involved in our affairs. While they are raking in cash from all sorts of really dubious sources. I mean, like you say, gambling is another one. You watch, I mean, you know, this like here, like I don't, I mean, I live in France, but you know, I'm in Scotland just now. But whether I watch TV football in France or TV football here, gambling ads non-stop, you know.
Yes.
And that is dirty money. Let's be honest about it. The gambling industry is deeply problematic and causes like, you know, this dreadful social consequences and harms, and they shouldn't be anywhere near sport, nor should an organisation like Saudi Aramco. You know, we're living through a sort of climate crisis, while FIFA is promoting the brand of the biggest corporate polluter in the world, who are going to use the organisation to try and make sure they can get all their oil out of the ground and guarantee our destruction. I mean, it is, you know, sport is being used in dreadful ways, and it all comes back to the fact that we've just let them govern themselves, you know, and said that, you know, that's no problem because politicians don't want to interfere in sport, right? Let's not get into that because that's a vote loser. And I hope I hope that this is partly what Infantino's ridiculous behaviour is doing is showing politicians and policymakers how dangerous it is if you let these organisations run themselves, given that the power they have.
And did you receive any? I mean, you mentioned you alluded to that. You know, some politicians and political campaigners reached out to you, but did you get any response from senior politicians in governments anywhere?
Yeah. I mean, I think the European parliamentarians who wrote to FIFA, I think that's it's a small intervention in some respects. You know, 50 members of the European Parliament writing to FIFA, but they're writing about governance issues. You know, they're writing they're writing about the most serious structural problems afflicting FIFA. That to me is significant. I'd like to see that replicated elsewhere, and we'll certainly be working towards that. There's no reason why domestic politicians can't take a stance on issues. I mean, take the UK, right? Everyone's criticising Infantino for the Peace Prize, but there's someone called Debbie Hewitt, who is the Football Association's representative on the FIFA Council. Now, the FIFA Council is supposed to hold the FIFA president accountable for what he does.
Yeah.
Debbie Hewitt draws a huge salary from FIFA to sit on the FIFA Council, similar, I think, if not equal to the salary that she would get from the Football Association. So what did she do about the Peace Prize? Did she say anything? Did she approve it? Does she think it's a good thing? What is she saying about all these other things that Infantino has said in support of President Trump? Has she objected? How did she object? Why did she not object? Now, these are questions that domestic politicians can ask of Debbie Hewitt. There's no reason why the UK Parliament, figures within the UK Parliament, couldn't look to hold her accountable. Right? That's where domestic politicians can play a role, and that can happen in every, you know, in every country in the world where politicians are concerned about the way that their member association is acting within FIFA. So that's partly what we're trying to encourage and trying to instigate, because it's that sort of pressure, I think, that could actually have a positive impact on FIFA. So we haven't. I think the MEPs one, you know, to go back to your question. Have we seen much intervention? No, but we're beginning to see some. And the fact is that there's never really been any before. So we're starting from a very low bar. And I'm actually, I'm not naive to the scale of the task. But I think the penny is beginning to drop with politicians that there is political gain to be had by actually taking this organisation on and getting involved. Because I think it could be a vote winner. People are pissed off, right? People are angry at this.
Yeah.
And you can harness that if you're smart.
Another thing, I think the irony is, and I kind of mentioned this because we do like a bi-weekly geopolitics discussion with Scott Lucas. And our first ever episode, like already a few months, he was saying that we now live in a world where basically everything is politicized, whether you like it or not. And now is the time for people to understand politics. And with that, you have to start understanding corruption. But thankfully, because of Trump and people like Farage here in the UK, for example, they made it easy for us to see it, because for some reason, they're so blatant about it. Like, you know, in the good old days, as I like to say, like, you know, any kind of corruption would be somewhere behind the scenes, or they meet up, like as we see in movies, they meet up in like dark corners of a car park somewhere with brown envelopes or whatever. But no, they're literally doing it on TV in front of our faces. It's like, it's like, basically, it's like, yeah, we are corrupt. Yeah, I'm giving, with Infantino. Yeah, I'm giving Trump a peace prize. To your face, I'm showing you that I am a corrupt person. It's a corrupt organization. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Literally, that's the feeling. It's like literally they do it to your face and they don't care. And I think people now, they're like, hello, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's ironic that they like, they're so, like you said, I'm not sure that they're very smart, to be honest, because if they're doing it so blatantly in our faces that way, they think that they just can get away with it. But the reality, they can't, surely, unless they're doing something that we're not aware of, where they have so much control over power, the levers of power, that they know they can get away with it, which of course it's way more concerning. But I really don't think that they're that clever, to be honest with you. I think they just completely lost the plot.
But you know what's really interesting, and this goes back to something you referenced earlier about sport transcending political ideology and political divides, right? When you there will be people who will go to bat for Farage, right? Oh, he's not corrupt, he's just doing a good job. Same with Trump, right? There's a lot of them, in fact, who'll go to bat. You take that corruption, right, and you put it into a non-political sphere like sport, everyone's pissed off, right? There's no one on the right who's saying, actually, I think it's okay that Infantino's doing this. It's not a right-left issue. It is everyone that I can see. I haven't spoken to a single person who, when I've referenced FIFA, who has said anything other than, all right, those are bad guys. That's a corrupt organization. Tends to be the sort of thing that comes back. Doesn't matter if you're talking to someone on the left or the right. It's the same sort of response. So within the world of sport, I think that there's an understanding and a genuine appreciation that these things that we are fighting for and fighting against, right, like equality, fairness, transparency, accountability, right? Everyone gets it in sport. No one pushes back against it. Whereas out in the political realm, where it's a bit more complex and things are a bit more fuzzy, and people can, people take different approaches to these issues, but in sport they don't. And that's what I find, like, as a campaigner, it is an easy thing to campaign on, because the door is ajar in terms of people are pissed off about what's happening and they want it to be run according to certain basic principles. The challenge is, can you get enough political force behind you to push the door open, right? Fully open.
Yeah.
But it is ajar. And that, like I say, I find it, I find it quite appealing, and it's also great because it tells us a story about society more broadly, right? If you're fighting for transparency and accountability and democracy in sport, because that's a good thing, and because we can demonstrate that's a good thing, it's a good story to tell to broader society at a time when these things are under attack, right, by certain forces.
Yeah, but the one thing that concerns me, because of course now we're talking more sort of on the global sporting scene from FIFA's perspective, but then when you look at the club level here in the UK, the one thing that I always found fascinating, that the fans, let's say, I remember when Abramovich bought Chelsea, people like me were like, he's a Russian oligarch. Do you guys don't have a problem with that? But I mean, okay, politicians are politicians. Like you said, it can be a bit fuzzy. And we had a government at the time that was kind of pretty blasé about Russian money flowing through London and all that stuff. But I'm surprised that the fans seem to be okay with it. To an extent, I remember, when the whole Ukraine war started. And of course, Abramovich was sanctioned. Some fans were complaining about that. They're like, yeah, but we need the money. And I feel that we kind of live in a society right now. And I'm kind of made a post or a comment, I think, about this on LinkedIn. And for some reason, went viral. I suppose people kind of agree with it. That we seem to be living in a society right now where money comes first all the time. It doesn't matter where you got that money from. It's that people celebrate your wealth. If you're a drug dealer, it doesn't matter, right? It's like if you're a crypto weirdo, it does not matter. And we even see that, mentioned Farage, people say, yeah, so what? Somebody gave him £5 million. It's like, well, actually, what it means, first, it's who, and the fact that it's a gift. Mate, what are you talking about? But people seem to have kind of I don't know if it's, I don't even know if it's a generational thing, because I'm seeing older people sort of, maybe even older than me. They'll be like, yeah, so what? It's money. Money is good.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, that is a problem too, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah, and it's again like take it into the realm of sport, right? Take it into football.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you sort of go to football games. I used to go to. I'm a Celtic supporter, right? And my entire family are Celtic supporters, and we would go to games. It was literally all I cared about for a large part of my childhood, and even into the sort of very early adulthood, right? And I still know people for whom that holds, right? That is what they care about. It's Celtic. And and money, right? They don't care where the money comes from. So Celtic was set up, to sort of protect immigrants and protect the Irish community in Glasgow. And it's one of these clubs that talks about having social conscience and believing in certain things, right? A lot of clubs believe that. And there are certain sections of the fan base that I think do hold true to those principles. There's another massive section of the fan base that just wants to win, just wants to beat Rangers. So if that money comes from a Saudi oligarch, I don't think they'd care. Or a Saudi prince or a Russian oligarch. I just don't think they'd care. And this is the contradiction with football supporters to an extent, because we need football supporters to care about the broader issues that are affecting the game, that are afflicting the game, that are making it worse both on and off the pitch. But the tribal nature of the game sort of militates against that, right? Because so many of the sort of real zealots just care about the success of their club and just care about the money, like you're talking about, right? Like it's all about just getting money, because it's the money you need to create the success. But again, it's a governance issue, right? That's a governance issue because we've created a system whereby only clubs with vast amounts of money can win, right? That's the governance issue that sort of fosters and feeds into a situation where fans are becoming, advocates for a better game. So it's a really interesting mix. I find it really interesting talking about supporters, and I've been we're running this campaign called Reboot FIFA. So you can see it on rebootfifa.com, trying to get people engaged and interested in it. And, when we talked about how we were crafting it, people kept saying, well, it's a supporters campaign. And my point was, well, yes, it is and it isn't. But there's a danger of trying to just go to the sort of the match going Saturday people, the real hardcore football supporters, because I think a lot of them are just interested in their club and aren't necessarily that concerned about the broader issues. Whereas I think there is this massive swathe of people who care about sport generally and who care about football and how it's run and understand how important it is without necessarily being, fiercely attached to one club or another. And I think those are the people that we need to engage because of, because I think there's a section of football supporters who just aren't concerned and who just care. To circle back to your original question, sorry, it's a long answer, who just care about money, because of the way the game operates.
And do you think this could ever change? I mean, because I think it's a generational thing. Because I think some of the older supporters, they are the hardcore. But I think again, one of the things that I think is the interesting thing about the younger generation, that they're much more politically engaged. Not necessarily in the right way. I mean, some of them are hardcore Trump supporters, for example, as well. So, but the fact that they are politically engaged, that potentially could be an opportunity to say, well, actually, you know what? The money does matter, because where the money comes from does matter, because if it's dodgy and there's any criminal connections, then potentially whatever assets that the club invested in could be seized and you lose the club.
Yeah, it's regulation. It's such a boring answer, again. Right? But it's regulation because what you do is you put in place rules that mean that can't happen. Don't ask a football supporter who only cares about his club winning trophies not to take money from the people who are going to guarantee them winning trophies. What you do is you close off that avenue because nutters in football, and I use the term affectionately because I know a lot of them, they're not always going to exist, right? And they're part of the lifeblood of the game, right? They are. And you don't want to take it away. I mean, some of it obviously gets out of hand, right, from time to time. But also that sort of rawness and those emotions, they are part of the game, right? And we don't want to lose that. But what we need to do is we need to prevent bad money, dirty money, from exploiting that passion in ways that are harmful to everybody, really. So to me, it's regulation. It's a really boring word to use when you're campaigning on stuff that we want. I want red tape. I want lots of it.
Yeah.
Because that's how I think you fix things.
Well, that's true. That's actually quite similar to what I push for in terms of AI regulation. I've been saying for gazillions of years before even people knew about AI's existence that, please regulate people like me, because the only thing that's stopping people like me from causing harm with AI is that I choose not to do harm with AI. It's a choice. It's like, if I wake up one day with some kind of weird aneurysm that turns me into an evil or whatever, it's like I can just go out there and do whatever the hell I like with AI. No regulation can stop me. And I think that's crazy. And it's the reason why we see the rise, of course, of the likes of Peter Thiel. I mean, again, part of that same cabal that Infantino seems to be part of right now. It's the same kind of, it's the same sort of game that they're playing. It's like you could see all the tech oligarchs sucking up to Trump, and again, so blatantly in front of the eyes of everybody. They used to support human rights. Now they not so much. They don't care very much about human rights. They don't care about DEI, despite the fact they spent years lecturing us all about how important human rights and digital ethics is and blah, blah, blah. Trump became president and that's it. Boom, whatever. Yeah. Invest in crypto or whatever. It's like, it's bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. That's why I don't know, because I try to be positive where I can, because I'm thinking this blatant overconfidence, it seems, I think that is backfiring. I really believe it will backfire big time.
Yeah, I hope so. I think football's part of that story,
Absolutely, yes.
Again, it's not, you get some people who are like, oh, you're a nice guy. Why are you working on football? And it's because I do think it is part of this pushback potentially, right, against these dangerous sort of nefarious forces. FIFA has been co-opted into that movement. Now, it's maybe not as, it doesn't have the sort of ruinous potential of unregulated AI, right? Of course it doesn't. Let's not be silly, but it is playing a dangerous role. It is assisting Trump and all his cronies. It is assisting Saudi Arabia. So yeah, I think tackling it, it's critical. It's an essential component of the broader pushback for, a more progressive, fairer society. I genuinely believe that. It's like, I believe this is sort of important work.
Yeah, and the sad thing about these sort of corruption stories as well is the fact that all that money that FIFA makes does not actually go, or at least not enough of it goes into supporting local communities, especially in the global south.
Exactly. I mean, imagine a situation, right? How much are they generating from this tournament? 11 billion? They're hardly paying any tax on it in Switzerland. They're not paying any tax in it, as far as I can tell, or there's very little tax in the US or Mexico. They get tax exemptions, by the way, on all the revenue. They don't pay anything.
Wow.
It's bananas.
Well, it's a charity, isn't it? It's non-profit, so I presume.
Exactly, that's their line. And their line is it's all going to football development. That's why you can't tax us. But imagine this 11 billion. Imagine you actually had a system where you said to member associations in the global south, okay, apply for this money. Tell us how you need this money, right? Tell us what projects you're going to do. Tell us what you're going to build. Tell us how you're going to provide football facilities for, women and girls in countries that need it, or how you're going to help lift people out of poverty through football, right? And we'll give you the money, and then we'll oversee how it's spent. We're not going to give any money to the English FA because they don't need it, or the Scottish FA because they don't need it. We'll give it to these other countries. And what you'd have is this vast redistribution of wealth from the global north to the global south, in ways that would genuinely benefit the game. The transformative potential is absolutely huge. And I'm the same as you.
More talents.
Yeah, I believe in this stuff. Like, I think the football unites the world stuff, when Infantino says it, it's, bullshit, right? But it's also true. It is also true, right? To an extent, it is this unifying force, and it can be this transformative force. But that's not happening, right? What's happening is it's being used to buy power and buy support, and it's been used to fuel corruption. And that's a tragedy, for all the people it's not helping,
And do you think this will change? I mean, because I know you've been a human rights campaigner for a long time, even before you got involved with the FairSquare. But I mean,
Do you know,
will this change in our lifetime at least?
I think so. I hope I'm not being. So I hope I'm not. I'm genuinely quite a pessimistic and skeptical person. I've been, people would not describe me. People around me would not describe me as a ray of sunshine or issues. But I am genuinely optimistic about this because I think when you have something that is so popular and when you have it so badly run to the point where it is not going to stop producing these ridiculous results, right? It's so badly run that they're just going to keep doing, ridiculous bad things. And we are going to keep collecting the evidence and putting it in front of policymakers. And we're going to grow support from those policymakers. And those policymakers aren't just going to come from the left. They're going to come from the right and the centre right as well, because people care about football and because it's going to become a vote winner. So I don't think it's going to happen soon. But I think unless they change their governance structures to sort of stop this from happening, it's inevitable that it will keep happening and we'll be able to keep generating support for it. So I'm actually pretty optimistic. I've worked on many lost causes, over the years, and they're great, and I think there's a lot to be said for working on lost causes, right? For just documenting stuff that happens and leaving a record of that. Like I think that's really important. But I'm genuinely excited at the sort of scope to make some impact on this. And I think if we can generate the resources to do that and do good research and do effective advocacy, I'm very optimistic. Strangely optimistic, I would say, Tim.
No, actually, me too, believe it or not. So, like you, people sometimes see me, Tim, please, can you just not talk about negative stuff? I'm like, it's not negative, it's reality. Sorry that reality is negative. So maybe we need to change that reality to make it positive. But the one thing, and I actually think, sort of reiterating the point that I made earlier, that I think because the corruption is so blatant across the board, not just in obviously FIFA, but even in politics, tech, in my case, that's my world as well. Is that people see it. I think people now are seeing it. Kind of like, what we've seen with Farage here in the UK, like people have supported him or whatever, but now it's corruption. It's just, it's coming out, and even people that believed in him, or like the same people that believed in Trump, when he told that there'll be no war. And now, of course, it's the Iran war situation is taking place. It's like people, I think, are finally realizing that they've been duped or they've been lied to, they've been betrayed. And going back to that point that I did with Scott Lucas, it's like, I think now we live in a world where it's not a right versus left issue anymore. It's basically all of us versus them, literally, right now, I think, because they don't care about left or right either, do they?
Right. Yeah. No, I have a certain sympathy for that. Like like you say, the sort of the corruption, and the sort of the contempt for the rest of us. Right, he's so out there and on display. But I think it's probably starting to chip away at their support base on the right, as well as the sort of left who are automatically sort of disinclined towards they're trying to do. So I can see that, and like I say, I think in sport it's probably just that bit more pronounced. I share your optimism. I mean, it's allied to deep sort of pessimism about the state of things, right? Like things are a mess. But like you say, I think you said earlier, they've gone too far. I think I feel the same. Like it's overreach, right? And I hope that the pushback is effective, and that we are collecting the evidence, and sort of advocating and building support, so that when the moment of opportunity arises, that we're well placed to take advantage of it.
And just as a fun, because obviously we're reaching sort of the end of our session, because obviously going back to FIFA and of course the World Cup, there's all that conspiracy theory that's going around that FIFA and Argentina are in cahoots, right? That FIFA is trying to make sure that Argentina wins or whatever. I mean, I think it's a bit silly. I don't think that's. I mean, I don't. How do you do that? Like, but is there any evidence that suggests that it's remotely similar, or rather, that it's remotely possible?
I mean, I understand the theory. Like conspiracy theories. I I don't have much truck with them. But do you know what the problem is? I would say, and the problem is that because of the Balogun affair, right? Because of the fact that they have shown themselves to be so easily susceptible to political pressure, so willing to bend the rules to suit their own purposes and their own allies. Once you do that, everyone's going to cry foul, right? At the merest hint of anything not being proper, people are going to say, well, obviously that's FIFA at it again. So again, it's hard to rig a football tournament. It's just incredibly difficult. You're an athlete, right? Like you'd know this a lot better than I would as someone who's only ever, played fields, right? I just think it's incredibly difficult to do that. So it strikes me as far-fetched. But that's not the point. The point is that people believe it now, because FIFA has basically said that they can, the rules can be bent for certain people.
Yeah. And I think it's to do with the fact that, of course, he's close to Trump. Trump, of course, is close to President Milei of Argentina. And so I think it's that kind of people kind of pulling all these strings together to say, it's a cabal, which is, I mean, it's true. Probably, it is a cabal, but you're right. I think it's really, really difficult to rig a game in that way. I mean, like, I think the worst thing they could do, like maybe they can make the ref a little bit biased, but the fans will be able to see through that. It's way too obvious. It's not that easy to rig any kind of sporting game. Because even I saw somebody, I think that's probably was a bot on Twitter somewhere that they think that the FIFA bribed England yesterday to play like that with Argentina. I was like, that is ridiculous. Now
That's taking it. Like, that's taking it quite far. That's definitely taking it.
Yeah.
The tragedy that we're even talking about, right? Like
exactly.
I mean, it feels like in the lifespan of this tournament, football has entirely changed as a sport, almost. And the football world we knew before this tournament started is completely different to the one that we find ourselves with now. It's quite remarkable how it's all played out.
Okay. I saw somewhere it's the least popular World Cup ever, apparently. The least popular, and of course because of the whole ICE situation in America, even though they still sold a lot of tickets, but actually they sold a lot less tickets than they expected. Many thousands and thousands of fans basically couldn't make it. They were blocked or arrested or whatever. So unfortunately, despite the fact this World Cup could have been really one of the best, like I think Infantino himself said he wanted this World Cup to be the best World Cup in history. And I think they had the opportunity to do it. Of course, the problem was that it's Trump that is the president. And of course, now it's seen as the least popular, probably even less popular than the one in Qatar, which is crazy.
Which is good. I guess the thing that sort of irks me a little bit as well with the Balogun affair is it's sort of obscuring the real story, I think, of it, which was that FIFA enabled this racial profiling and racist propaganda. The way that Somali referee was treated, the way that the Iranian team were treated, the sort of the tweets that the Department of Homeland Security were putting out with sort of whiffs of Nazism, when they were talking about one land, one homeland, and blood and soil, all of that stuff. The way in which FIFA enabled that and allowed that to happen. This showcase for unity has actually become a way for the MAGA movement to shine a spotlight on this disgusting racism that they want to instill and project. It's like, I understand why the Balogun affair took center stage, but it is a shame that on-field issues, because the game and the spectacle is so attractive, have sort of obscured or made us forget a little bit of just how repugnant the MAGA movement is, and how FIFA let that racism, sort of fester and swirl around the tournament and affect the tournament, like players and officials being racially profiled. It's unconscionable, So
we've never seen this before. Seen this before.
No, to talk about, to accuse referees of being terrorists, essentially. to accuse players or members of the Iranian delegation of being terrorists, to have sniffer dogs, going after the Uzbekistan team as they arrive at a stadium.
Yes.
I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope people remember that as well as the other stuff that probably dominated the headlines.
Well, we're here to make sure that they do remember. We'll carry on talking about it. We'll carry on reporting it. I don't know, because on your website you've got quite a lot of news articles and reports about this. So, I mean, where else can people find you online? So obviously you've got FairSquare.org. Is there anywhere else that they can follow your work?
Yeah, that's where most of it is. So you can also go to rebootfifa.com, which is the campaign that we're running on Infantino and people more broadly, and you can sign up to a sort of a mass complaint that we're going to file with FIFA's Ethics Committee in the coming weeks and months. So those are the two places for you to find the work.
Cool. Yeah, and also the links will be in the description for everybody. And again, like, I what I always do with my guests is I say that because I'm building retortmedia.com as an independent media outlet where we want to talk about these things because the media aren't talking much about it, like barely, right? So that's why for everybody to keep an eye on retortmedia.com. So we'll be writing more articles about this because obviously you guys obviously produce a lot of press releases as well, so that will be published on our website as well. So yes, to make sure that people never forget what's happening here, because at the end of the day, this is how we can achieve any change. For us to be aware of what's going on and deal with it.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just also had to unplug my flip mic and put in my my battery because the phone was going to die. Recording. Sorry. I hope my recording isn't screwed up now, or the audio isn't too bad. But yeah,
it's good. It's good.
Yeah, we have a body of work on sport, and we have a body of work on just things like political repression and migrant worker abuses. So this is just one aspect of our work. But it's definitely the one that's most in the spotlight just now.
Yeah. Well, we'll have more to talk about. I mean, yeah, as I said to you before, this door is always open for you. And I know we're going to have more conversations and discussion because this problem is not going away anytime soon. I think we're going to have quite a few conversations on that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No. But with that, Nick, all I have to say again, thank you so much, for your time, for joining us here, and more importantly, thank you for all the campaign, all the work that you do. Because if you didn't do it, I don't think anybody else would have done it probably by now. So thank you very much for that campaign and for increasing awareness about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, no, like I say, thanks a lot. It's always nice to have the chance to talk about it in more detail. And especially, with someone who understands sport, right? Like, it's not often you get the chance to speak to athletes who have just a really unique perspective on it. That certainly I don't. So no, it's a pleasure to come on.
No, thank you. And actually, sorry, even though we should have ended, but very, very last quick question. Did you actually get any response from footballers? Just out of interest.
No, we haven't really. It's really difficult. We spent a lot of time in the run up to Qatar 2022 trying to get footballers to help, to support. They're really hard to reach. They're very well protected by agents who don't want them wading into political issues, I would say.
Right.
I think they're a big part of the potential solution. I think at some point they need to get on board.
Yeah.
I think they have, right now they have incredible voice, and a lot of them are incredibly articulate campaigners on all sorts of issues, typically on field issues. But they are a lot of really effective communicators. I find that they can reach people in a way that like people like me can't. So I think they're people we want to reach. And we're working at that all the time, but it's difficult to get to players. I mean, I'm sure you must have a sort of perspective on that, right? Why players are harder to reach than others.
Well, I think I alluded to that earlier. I mean, players tend to be, we just focus on our thing. We just want to train, focus on our game, and make sure that we win championships and all that stuff, so they don't necessarily focus on that. But I would think certainly retired players would probably want to focus on that because they, because they've got nothing else to do. It's like once you're out, you're out. But maybe yeah, I think active footballers would be probably very difficult just because they're just far too focused on their training and you kind of live in a bit of an isolated bubble as well. You don't necessarily focus on. I mean, I can't appreciate. I mean, in the 90s we didn't have social media, but I can imagine right now in the social media and all that crazy level of information bombardment, you can't have the phone with you. You'd be like, certainly I would just put my phone away and lock it away for several hours so I can focus on my training. So but retired, I would say retired players probably would be the best people to try and reach because
those are the ones we're trying to reach. I wouldn't even begin to try and approach a current player. I wouldn't know how to do it, and wouldn't for the reasons you outlined. It would be a really hard sell, right? You're basically asking someone to sort of slightly jeopardize their career to help on an issue that you care about, but they might not even know about. That's a really hard sell. So I think it's the former pros who are the ones who I'd really like to get involved. And I think there's a good chance of that, but so far it's hard to get to them, and it's a tough sell. Right? It's a tough sell because you're asking them to be adversarial, right? Not just critical, but adversarial, and that's because we're not just saying FIFA's bad and it's done this bad. We're saying, no, this organization needs to be regulated. Someone needs to take it on, and that's taking the argument into a political realm that I think some commentators are a bit uncomfortable with.
I mean, although I have no connections with him directly, but with Gary Lineker, because he's become very political recently. I mean, surely he would be the guy to reach, no?
Yeah, I think he's the guy that everyone would like to reach. I think there's probably it's probably a very long list of people who are trying to speak to Gary Lineker about this. We would certainly love to speak to Gary Lineker about it because he's the type of guy who has reach, who has views, who has principles, and I think would be pretty much aligned with the type of stuff that we're saying. He's not the only one, but he's certainly, I think you're right, he's certainly the most high profile.
One of the key players.
Yeah. And he's powerful.
I'll see. He is. I mean, I'll see. I mean, I was literally thinking top of my head who I know that might know him or might know somebody that knows him. I'll see. I mean, I'll try to spread the words and see what happens. I mean, I know a few people involved in basketball, but basketball obviously is very different. But you never know. I'll try. I'll see what I can do.
Sure. Any thoughts you have? It's funny. I know a lot of people who know a person that can get to Gary Lineker. There's about 8 different people are like, oh no, I know a guy who can get you to Gary Lineker. But it hasn't happened yet. Maybe we'll just maybe he'll find his way to us.
Probably, hopefully. I mean, actually, for the listeners, if you guys know anybody that can get us to Gary Lineker, comment below or share the video with them. But absolutely, no, I think, as a community, we'll try something. We'll absolutely try get there. I mean, I think eventually they will, I mean, because they see what we all see, right? I mean, people like Gary Lineker. So eventually your campaign will have to reach them, whether they like it or not. So
that's the hope, right? Like if you start generating political pressure, I think you get to a situation where people are coming to you because they're interested in the work you're doing, and if you do good work, you get more political pressure, you get more support. So it's kind of like a snowballing effect. Right now, I'm pleased with how it's going. I'm not disappointed that we haven't had, fleets of former professionals sending us emails and asking to get involved. I think that's entirely normal. I think the stage we're at just now, we're probably making just about the right amount of progress that's possible. So I feel like we're kind of on schedule. But certainly we will need that type of support to draw in the broader public at some point. Definitely.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. But now, hopefully, let's see what we can do. We'll do this together. as much as we
Okay.
can. But again, yeah, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you everybody for listening. And yeah, I'll see you soon, my man.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do me a big favor and make sure that you've subscribed on our YouTube channel and you like this video and you shared it to as many people as you possibly can to keep them informed and get them out of the clickbait shadows. But we can't do this on our own. We have to do this all together as a growing community that believes in truth. And we want to get rid of these clickbait, rage bait shenanigans that is proliferating the web and poisoning everything that is out there today. Now, if you can't afford it as well, please consider joining us as a paid member on retortmedia.com/support. This supports not just the podcast that we do here, but also the reporting that we do on Retort Media ecosystem, where we try to maximize the reach to as many people as we possibly can through information and real journalism that prioritizes facts over fiction. Now, with that, guys, thank you so much for all of your support. Much love, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
You are listening to